Today, I am joined by Kathy Buckley. Kathy is the president and founder of Team Sanfilippo Foundation, which is a nonprofit medical research foundation that was founded in 2008 by parents of children with Sanfilippo syndrome. Kathy, welcome. And why don't you tell us about you and we'll pick into it from there.
Sure, Mike. Well, my original background, before my son got diagnosed, was finance. So I'm an accountant. I have an MBA. I, worked on Wall Street for many years in investments. I was just going along life, and then, I had my daughter, and then my son, and he had some severe challenges, and took me years to get a diagnosis for him. He was diagnosed at age 8. I started at age 2, trying to find out what was going on. So that was a long journey. Once I got the diagnosis, I decided to try and use some of my skills to, raise some money, start a foundation, because there was a big gap in the research for Sanfilippo. Other lysosomal storage disorders had a lot more funding, and there were many years ahead. Sanfilippo, because it's a neurological disease of children, kind of got left behind because the community felt that if you can't treat the brain, you don't treat it all. So it wasn't worth getting a treatment unless you could cure the brain. The pharmaceutical companies and the doctors felt that, if you can't make a child whole and have a normal cognitive function, it wasn't worth treating the body. So we, as parents, felt very differently. So we decided I decided to go on 2 paths. One was make sure I could stabilize my son long enough to benefit from a treatment. And then the second was starting the path towards research and what avenues we were going to get into. So the first thing we did was pull in experts from all around the world into a conference and figure out what the state of the research was and what the best path going forward was to hit. And that's what really started it all. So since then, we've been dedicated to just funding treatments were not basic research, that were clinically viable. And that's our mission. We don't fund basic research unless it's going to lead to a near-term treatment. And so through the years, I've managed to find a few things myself that we have put money into that had the ability to stabilize kids and also have the ability to get into the clinical space with it. And, it took 10 years of research, but we now have 2 viable clinical trials that are in the works. One just started this month with an oral medication, and the second one is an IV treatment. And right now, my son, even though we don't have any clinical trials, we have him on a compassionate use we're going on the 3rd year of treatment for him. And we're using that data to support off-labeling of the drug. Matthew's 22 now. He should have passed away by the time he was 15, they told me. And he has really not have any of the typical symptoms and problems that other kids have because of these treatments. And now my job is to get it out to other people. So that's what we're working on currently. And I guess that's pretty much my story. 10 years. It took 2008 we started, and now it's 2022. So yeah, more like 12 years or 14. Yeah. So clinical trials are a lot more difficult to maneuver than I had thought they were going to be. A lot of red tape that we're dealing with. I think that's basically my story.
Kathy, could you rewind for a second and talk about this idea of compassionate use? Because that's a term we hear a lot in rare disease community and also in Sanfilippo.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah, so compassionate use now is that they don't like you to use that terminology. It's expanded access now. It used to be called compassionate use. I still use that terminology, but expanded access. So it's if a company has a viable treatment that's not an approved treatment or approved drug, they can give it to a patient. And it's basically run like a trial. All the lab works and all the testing has to be done, but you're not allowed to use the data to approve the drug in any way. It's just something that helps the company kind of get a sense of what it's going to do and how they're going to develop their trial around it. They also do it for compassionate reason to help a person. Very hard to get because companies do not like to risk having their programs fail because something bad happens outside of a trial.
Your son is, like you said, he's on the older end.
He's 22 and a half.
And you've always
Yeah.
been a big advocate, and I think your foundation as well, on kind of alternative herbal supplements, things like that. Could you talk a little about that, its prevalence, as a topic within the Team Sanfilippo community there?
Our focus really is that we want treatments for symptoms. We do the mainstream drug trials. That's 100% our focus. But we also focus on nutritional aids that will help a child sleep better, help them stop, their behaviors or any kind of problem that a family's having. They're not sleeping, they're not eating, they're not swallowing, they're not walking well. We certainly believe that basic good nutrition and basic supplements that they're lacking will help the child feel better and help them have a better quality of life. So we are focused on quality of life and making sure the kids are sleeping and the family is not having a nightmare of a life with managing the behaviors and the sleep deprivation that they normally have. So we do work with a lot of parents separately on stuff like that.
What do you find to be some of the biggest challenges and questions you guys are getting on a continual basis from other parents?
A lot of it's quality of life is sleep. A lot about sleep, a lot about involuntary movements that they can't lay down. They can't stop moving. A lot of it's just the behavior issues that they have. Another one, which are typical in Sanfilippo, how to manage the seizures, what medications are used. I think that's about covers most of it.
I wanted to get your take on the collaboration efforts that take place within the Sanfilippo community. Obviously, there are different foundations throughout the U.S. and across the world. What are some of the challenges and what are some of the breakthroughs you've seen over the years in terms of collaboration?
Over the years, what I've seen is that, based on our foundation's work with gene therapy, with Abiona, we were able to start that company and fund it. Gene therapy is such a big investment. We needed multiple foundations to go in together. So we facilitated the original investment into that company. And between, I think it was 6 or 7 foundations. So I personally called them all, got them involved, got them to put down as much money as they could. So we each had different investments. And then I coordinated with the company to make sure that we were getting stock for that investment, that this was not going to be a gift. So in the end, even though gene therapy was not, what we all hoped it was going to be, it's still in the works and other companies running it. But what it did do was provide, because of the sales of the stock, provided each foundation with about $8 or $9 million in their funds because they sold the stock at a good level. So within the community around the world, I think that one deal gave the Sanfilippo community about $40 million to work with around different foundations, which is now going back into other treatments and other funds. So our foundation was the one who orchestrated that deal. So
Well, that's
really
an incredible haul of money.
we did, and that was, even though the treatment may not have come to fruition yet, it's still in the works. It provided us with a huge amount of money to work with. So that money now is going towards my current clinical trial, and hopefully the second one when we get to the second one. But it's going to be funding the current clinical trial that we're doing with nabroxol. So I think that was one of the best things that my foundation did. But I've used that's using my MBA background to orchestrate, a deal like that, and to
Mhm.
help people make sure they sold at the right level, and
Yeah.
didn't hold on to the stock, and reinvested into other treatments. So I think for us, one of our greatest achievements, for the community. To me, in what I've done for Sanfilippo, I think that was my greatest achievement, was to get the funding that they needed to fund all, and they're still using all that money on different programs.
Mhm. All right. So, you're talking about your background in finance. I think a lot of us, when we're thrown into this position of being, you find out your kid has this rare disease, there's no money, you got to figure out how to
Yeah,
fundraise, how to pitch in some way or another. I happen to have a background in finance as well. Like, it's obviously a big undertaking when you try to, start something up. What are some of the unique skill sets that you felt you had that gave you the confidence to tackle this with a, leadership role? And also, what is some of your advice for other, desperate parents,
yeah.
say with other rare diseases where there isn't something started up the way we have now in the Sanfilippo community? What's some of your advice for those people just struggling, that overanalysis paralysis where you just want to
Yeah.
do something?
The most thing that I would say is tenacity. You have to analyze the situation, attack it from different angles, and with your skill set. So I had, basically no background in science, but I dove into analyzing the disease from a cellular level, and looking at each avenue that was actually being promoted to see what was the best, um, best place to put our money. Um, and working with, obviously, scientific advisory people, to ascertain, you know, what really has the best chance of success. And you have to know the disease inside and out to make those financial decisions. You can't, or, I don't like to rely on other people to make those decisions. I want to know it, that when I talk to a scientific advisory board, or a scientist or a doctor, that I agree with their opinion or what they recommend to me, and it has to make sense. So, the tenacity and the and really, when you're hit with the disease, you even as a finance person have to learn everything about the body, how it works, and if you don't, you get somebody to explain things to you so you can understand it, so what you're doing scientifically, because you can't make good financial decisions without knowing the science, you know
Yeah.
and so I did that. I was up till 3 o'clock in the morning poring over every research paper, every document. I had friends who were nurses, doctors, advising me, and if I didn't understand something, I'd have them read it and explain it to me, so I did understand it, and got a whole host of opinions on what we thought the best avenue of treatment would be, most successful. So we had like at least 5 different avenues of what the best course would be and where to put our money. You can learn anything if you have, you got a brain and 2 hands. You can learn it, but it takes the time. You have to put the thousands and thousands of hours into the research to really get a grasp on what, people are doing. Gene therapy, extremely complicated. So I had to learn that, and be able to follow a conversation. And you go to a conference with a whole bunch of scientists, you have to feel comfortable, raise your hand and ask a question, and not feel dumb. You got to really know everything.
Yeah.
So
And I
I would
imagine
say,
that's an extreme challenge, you know, trying to have that much space in your brain to not only do whatever your regular profession is, but try to learn a whole new
oh yeah,
language of medical
yeah,
language.
whole language. Yes.
Does your foundation work with a scientific advisory board? How does that kind of work in terms of the structure of the decision-making process when it comes to these, you know, complex clinical
Yeah.
trial decisions and all that?
Yes, we definitely work with, we have a scientific advisory board, and we do work with them when we have a project that we feel, we'll evaluate it first, and then we will pass it to the experts to make sure that it's viable, and if we're gonna and what stumbling blocks we could hit down the road.
One of the big challenges just in the world today, let alone as a parent on a treacherous journey like ours, is the loneliness factor, battling that depression and uncertainty. How have you guys helped other parents cope with those issues, the parents' issue, not or the family's issue, not just the medical issue with the child?
The most important thing is not to lose your own health in trying to help the health of your child, because if you're not healthy, you can't help them and you can't take care of them. So you need to make sure you get enough help with the day-to-day care of your child so you can, work out, eat right, get enough sleep, and be healthy enough. That's the best thing you do for your mental health is, and stay positive no matter what challenge you have. You figure something out to help them, whether how long it takes. You look at what's happening. You don't want your child suffering, and I think that's the most depressing part, is if you see your child suffering, you can't do anything about it. There's always something you can do. It may not cure the disease, but you can make them more comfortable with medications, supplements, anyway, sleep, whatever needs to be addressed day to day that's happening. You just have to take that. Don't look at the bigger picture. Look at the little problem. Fix that, and that helps the bigger stuff. I think that's what is important for parents to stay healthy, is that, the disease it keeps going, and you have to deal with it, and you know what the end result is. We know. And if you provide them the best quality of life, I think that you have to understand and accept that it's terminal, whether it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 or 20. You have to make sure that they live their lives to the fullest they can live and the happiest they can be. And then just be able to accept that, it's a hard thing to grapple with when you're looking at your little baby. To me, I don't want them to have one day of suffering on that path to that end result. And that keeps me going, to make sure that he's happy every day.
Now, I have one final question for you. Where do you see the future of this fight against Sanfilippo, and where do you think there's the greatest amount of hope in potential solutions for kids over the next few years, realistically?
Well, of course, I think that my two treatments are really the best hope for the whole community. I don't see anything else going on out there that offers a lot of hope for kids. I've proven the two treatments with my own son. He's 22 and he is running around happy. He has minor issues, nothing compared, and he's not attenuated. Like Connor's is more on the attenuated side. He's going to do better just because he's attenuated. Matthew's got a severe form. He should have been gone years ago. So I know they work. It's just, and they don't have any side effects, which is one of the most important things when you're looking at a treatment. There's no negative side effects to these two treatments. And if it's given to a child at a young age, the trajectory of the disease will be different. It's just going to be slower. It's not going to go it's not going to go down. It's just going to, they're just going to kind of slowly go down. And since we've never tried it on a young child, we don't know what the potential is to prevent the brain damage that's done. I have a son who has severe brain damage already, and he's just stable, but his body is in great shape. He hasn't had any physical deterioration. So I think that gives him the really great quality of life. And he's running around happy. He goes to the movies. He goes to lunch with us. We have activities that we do with him. And I think that, these two treatments are really the best hope for Sanfilippo. Once we get them, to the market, which is a lot harder than we really thought that it was going to be.